We kind of worked on some situations. We worked on some blitz pickup situations with the defense, probably even more so than we would in a normal practice. We really focused on blitz situations, and then did some pass scale, some 7-on-7 stuff. And then we put the ball down and we let either our younger guys or maybe some of the guys that we just still needed to get more information on play a little bit. Much shorter than our first two scrimmages have been, and we held a lot of the older guys or guys that we kind of feel like we already have all the info on them and know what they can do. We held those guys out, so it was by no means a full scrimmage compared to the first two.
How different does the offense look under Jeremy Johnson as opposed to Nick Marshall?
Right now, it all looks pretty much the same. You know, we're running the same plays with all three of the guys that we're still rotating in there, and each one of those three guys probably does things a little bit different. I would say. You know, right now I don't think there's any part of the offense that we could or could not run with either Jeremy or Nick over the other. I think they both could do the same, you know, could fulfill the same role for us as far as running the offense.
There's a rumor going around that Nick Marshall can throw the ball 80 yards in the air. As an offensive coordinator, does that kind of make you salivate a little bit?
Well, I think that would make our offensive line coach nervous. I mean, if he feels like he's got to protect long enough for us to throw it 80 yards, we've got some work to do up front. But I haven't seen it yet. You know, I know that the guys, that really all three of those guys can still throw the ball deep. They got strong arms. So a big part of what we do is trying to stretch the field vertically, so that's a big plus.
How's Nick been doing as far as protecting the ball? He had all those turnovers last season, fumbling, and also the interception.
For the most part, all the guys have done a pretty good job. Nick's done well. You know, I think he's been very conscious of it. You know, we only had him live for that one scrimmage. I don't think we had any turnover issues there with him. And then, of course, in the other scrimmages and team situations, you got the orange jersey on, so you're not being hit as much, but we haven't thrown a lot of interceptions either, which has been positive.
You guys work on that pretty early in practice. Talk a little bit about
Yeah, really across the board on offense, every position, we work on ball security every day. We have these ball bands we do and things to try to one, they're functional and they have a purpose actually fundamentally, but two, it's just to keep it constantly on their minds. We're always stressing it. And then there's some things I do with the quarterbacks, you know, to always make sure they got two hands on the ball in the pocket. You know, that's what really is a quarterback, aside from throwing an interception or if you were running. You know, you're in the pocket and things start breaking down and you have to flush and scramble. A lot of times you drop it to one hand and that's when any D lineman can rip it out. And so yeah, it takes discipline to be able to move, especially for athletic guys, move and keep both hands on it at all times. So that's something we work every day.
Film you saw with Nick last year, just the way you carried the ball, running it, it was careless at times?
No, I think a big part of the ball security at any position, but at quarterback is all just about attention to detail, and you've got to discipline yourself to make that a habit. It's not something you can just think about every now and then. You got to make it a habit, and that's why we drill it every day, and that's why we have accountabilities. When we're watching film, if I see them with one hand on the ball, we're going to do accountabilities for that the next day to keep it in their head that it's got to become something that they don't think about. And I've been really pleased with all those guys, but him you asked about specifically with the way he's been coachable to do that.
I realize quarterback's such a different position, but does it help Nick that he's played in the SEC before, that he's played in huge games and situations like that, or?
I don't know yet. I would think it'd be good that he's an older guy. When you come from junior college, you know, he's played in this league for a year, so he understands that. And you're also 2 years older than your average young man coming out of high school. So there's just from natural maturity level that should exist. And while junior college is not the SEC, it's maybe a step up from speed from a lot of high schools. So having a year in that can't hurt.
With similar capabilities from both Nick and Jeremy and similar reps thus far, what do either one of them have to do? What questions do you need answered this week that they haven't answered for you already?
Yeah. Well, really, we still got three guys we're looking at. We feel very confident. We know what Jonathan can do at this point from the spring and from the first 2 weeks of fall camp. And so we were honest with him and those guys that, you know, we're going to let the two new guys who don't have the same amount of reps. They don't have as many, and we haven't been able to evaluate them as much. We're going to let them get more of the reps this week instead of splitting it three, whereas we were doing four ways. And I think it just always goes back to who's going to earn the respect of their teammates. You know, who's the team believe in? Who's the offense believe in? Who's going to protect the ball? And who do we feel like we can trust that even if it's a simple game plan or a big game plan, that they're going to be able to execute what we ask them to do and play within the system.
Gus had mentioned this week several times. You've alluded to this week. Is the plan to make a decision at the end of this week?
We don't have a day But the quicker you can decide, then the quicker you can move on to preparing for your opponent, and you can prepare for maybe getting that continuity together. And we feel like we had 4 for a good while. We're now at 3. And I'll say this, guys, about Kyle Frazier. I mean, you talk about a young man who loves Auburn. I don't know if I've ever been more proud of a young person I've coached than I am of Kyle right now. Because, when you look at it at the quarterback position, I tell those guys all the time, I mean, it's unfair, but it's reality. When you win, you get way too much credit, and when you lose, you get way too much blame. And he went through some stuff that not a lot of people go through, and I couldn't be more proud of last spring, and especially this summer and fall camp, the way he responded to those scenarios. And then at the end of the day, he just came to us and said, hey, I want to help this team win. He said it was more important to him that Auburn get back to where he wants Auburn to be when he came here. And I think that was a pretty selfless act, but I want to make sure I said that. But now when you get to 3 guys and 2 guys, you start to kind of narrow down those reps. And it's not just at quarterback, it's at every position right now.
Brett, is it going to be in the back of your mind if Jeremy separates himself, maybe, are you nervous a little bit about the possibility of playing a true freshman quarterback in the SEC, or has that even gone through your mind, and do you think he can handle it if that's?
Well, I think anytime you play a guy that is either a true freshman or a guy who doesn't have any of that experience, you're always going to be a little anxious, I'll say, to see how they respond, because it's one thing to do it in a live scrimmage situation that's controlled, or in a practice where they got orange jersey on. When you put 90,000 people in the stands, how are they going to respond? Because good things are going to happen, but bad things are going to happen. And so that's one thing you're also looking for, when you decide who am I going to go with. It's who do I think that when it's really good, they're going to be the same, and when things get really tough, they're going to be even keeled. They're not going to be rattled. And I think a lot of it, our job is to put someone in there that's ready. I mean, in fairness to whoever that becomes, we got to feel like we're doing right by them, and that we feel like they're ready to handle that.
Have the quarterbacks responded to pace and tempo so far?
Very well. And early on for Nick and Jeremy, that's half the battle. Jonathan and Kyle had been used to it from the spring and from the summer. That's half the battle, getting used to the way we do things at that tempo. So not only are you asking them to learn a new system and to learn reads, but you're asking them to do it at warp speed. But they picked it up well. As a matter of fact, I'd say the last 5 or 6 practices, 7 practices, I don't think we've had issues with communication or anything like that, or tempo. You'd have to go way back for me to even remember that issue being an issue. I think it's more now about the execution and the finer details.
Brett, you said